welcome everybody to this panel on the topic of do telcos need AI to fulfill the potential of APIs? So we have a distinguished panel of technologists and engineers who are very much on the forefront and consuming APIs. So we'll be talking about the APIs and the API libraries that our panelists are using to serve their customers. We'll also be talking about what telcos can do to build relationships with developers and what the role of the hyperscalers might be in that context. We'll also be talking about what the different needs are that are served by APIs, customer needs, and how they might vary in different markets. And obviously also we'll be looking at AI and the role of AI in APIs and what exciting developments our panelists are seeing there. So I'm just going to say, very briefly, introduce our panelists and also say if people want to send in questions, please do send them in on the chat and we'll try to get round to those during the course of the discussion if there's an opportunity or afterwards in the Q&A session. So here are panelists. I'll just say who they are and then they can say a few words about themselves. We've got Aulia Amin, who is GM of Data Solutions Product at Telkomsel in Indonesia. We have Fahim Sabir, who is Product Engineering Leader, Network on Demand at Colt, although I gather he may have a new title by now. And also Fortune Barnard, who is Director of Digital Security and Resilience at VMO2, who may also have a new title, I gather. So it'd be interesting to hear about that. And I'm David Martin. I'm Senior Analyst and Telco Cloud Lead at SDL Partners and author of a report last year on the subject of Network as a Service, APIs, AI, and the open cloud. So I'll just let the panelists introduce themselves, say a bit about their background and their work, and then we can get into the details of the discussion. So Aulia, perhaps you'd like to say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for having me. My name is Aulia. I work in Telkomsel, the largest telco operator in Indonesia with 170 million customers. I'm mainly handling the API monetization for external in Telkomsel. Thank you.
Okay, and Fortune, would you like to say a bit about what you do?
Yeah, hello, my name is Fortune Barnard. Although I am in digital security and resilience, my background is very much system design and architecture. And over the last few years, I've always looked at how to use technology to transform customer experience.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And Fahim, would you like to say a few words about yourself, your role at Colt?
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you for having me. I've been at Colt for quite a long time now, I think about 17 years. Most recently, I've held the position of the Director of Network on Demand. Network on Demand is Colt's premier network as a service platform, arguably one of the biggest network as a service platforms in the world, covering, I don't know, 30-something thousand on-net locations, millions of off-net locations, etc. So my responsibility over the last few years has been to develop out that offering, including all the orchestration, all the APIs, etc., working with standardization bodies and a whole host of other things as well to really deliver out a network as a service experience that is there to delight our customers.
Okay, excellent. Well, perhaps we can go straight in then. Actually, Fahim, as you started to talk about the work you've been doing with sort of helping to define and develop APIs and also working with the customers and so on, just to go into a bit more of the detail about what you've been doing at Colt and all the work with defining and delivering and serving customers with APIs.
Yeah. So, I mean, Colt operates in mainly in the fixed line space and in B2B as well. So, our work has always been around, well, actually, how do we orchestrate that experience across with our customers, who typically tend to be businesses, or with our partners who are either other carriers at various different levels, or other sort of over-the-top type providers as well. So we started an initiative. We worked within the MEF to define what's known as their LSO framework APIs, and there's been a ton of work done by a number of carriers in that space. So that basically what we can do is we can utilize one another's networks to provide sort of underlay type capability or transport capability on a fully automated basis. So the whole idea of APIs are really important in this particular space, and the standardization of APIs becomes even more important. We don't integrate with one partner, we integrate with several hundred partners. And, if you imagine the situation whereby if we had to start off, let's say, for example, a project for every single partner we needed to integrate with, well, I'd have a job for life. But I'm not sure it'd be a particularly interesting one. I'd rather just basically be able to build a single integration platform that I can then reuse across all of the different sorts of partners that we have, and that's why the standardization of it kind of becomes key. Our focus has really been on that sort of what could probably be described best as sort of the quote to delivery type of journey. All the way from being asked the question, can you deliver something, all the way through to actually activating it and trying to do that within a few minutes. That's been absolutely critical, and the uptake has been pretty good so far.
Okay, well, that sounds very encouraging. It sounds like you're pretty sort of mature on your journey, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think that basically, I think that there is the carrier community is now starting to make a real step change in this particular space, and there are a lot of very, very serious conversations happening about it, which is really nice to see. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great, because it sounds like you've got a lot of scale there, but also getting on top of the automation, which is obviously key for adoption and for sustainability of that sort of business model. I wonder, Aulia, if I can sort of go to you briefly to talk about the kind of APIs that you have been using at Telkomsel, because I think they're quite different, aren't they, from the work that Fahim's been doing. We can go into some more detail later on in the discussion about that. If you could just sort of let us know the kind of APIs you've been working with.
Yeah. So my job is a little bit different with Fahim. So my job is to expose telco capabilities for the external clients, for monetization external clients. So the interesting thing is that the use case that I'm working on is mainly starting with financial inclusion and fraud, because that's what the market wants at the time. And right now, starting to move into the API related with the 5G capabilities, such as the quality and demand, etc. But what we start is mostly based using a telco data to serve external clients, mainly bank and financial services in the space of financial inclusion and fraud prevention.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good. We'll go into some more detail on that later on when we talk about customer needs that are served by different APIs. But maybe we can get on to the second of our sort of topics here, which is basically a key one, really, which is how telcos can establish relationships with developers to use APIs. I mean, one means obviously is through the hyperscale platforms, but then there are other APIs that are available, as they say, other sort of platforms and ecosystems. So maybe, Fortune, you'd like to sort of kick us off with that a little bit, to talk about APIs and ecosystems and how we got to where we are now, if you like, a bit of background.
Hello again, thank you. A quick disclaimer: the views expressed here are my views, not the views of my employers. So let's get that out of the way. Let's take a step back to understand where we're coming from, right? Telcos, alongside banking, operates in a very unique characteristic and constraints, right? Their core revenue came from the radio, the core network, and they sought services beyond those traditional offering like SMS and voice to value-added service, location-based services, or even fixed and mobile convergence. So to facilitate this development, these deliveries and billing of those services, telcos needed a specialized IT systems. And these specialized IT systems are called service delivery platforms. I remembered an article written in 2004 or 2006 by Netcracker when they came up with a very new concept of the service delivery platform. These SDPs, what do? They allow the utilization of the vast network of data that we have, and they also help with the integration of all those systems that we have, like enterprise services bus, CRMs, to enable the identification of customers or mobile customers to use the communication and protocols. So in short, two key components for SDP. One, for service creation to facilitate the consumption of all those services. I think most of us will recognize the GSMA One API is used by that. And two, network integration and service orchestration. Those are the key components of SDP. So in short, SDP serves as the conduit for external companies to integrate with telcos to enable the creation of all those millions of services that we use today. That's the role of SDPs. Now, if you look at this, SDPs are primarily focused on the network abstraction. That's their role. And when the telcos built this mashup of services to respond to their market needs, it worked very good. It worked internally. There was only one problem. Telcos overlooked the aspect of service exposure and target audience, right? By the way, too rightly, they couldn't cater for everyone. It was the build it and they will come approach. That was okay in 2000. In 2012, maybe not so. In 2024, definitely not so, because you need to consider the developer today. You need to consider resellers, all those third parties who can use the expo service. You need to think about service exposure. Otherwise, all those services are eroding your value. And that is where we are with telcos today. So SDPs were heavily telco specific, requiring the developer to understand all the telco languages just to create an app to send an SMS confirmation to the end user. But guess what? Industries are converging. I heard from one of the panelists earlier on. Banks are adopting telco features. In fact, in some part of the world, telcos are becoming banks. This highlights the need for larger ecosystem conversions. We are talking more and more about ecosystems. The future is, in fact, currently, the present is towards an API-first mindset. In the last 4 years alone, I'm aware of 4 big telcos who have migrated from their SDP approach to an API-first approach. And these API management platforms are all about how we discover, register, and consume those API. It's about designing those API for their intended target. Guess what? The developers. That means our product and focus is no longer the building of services in the SDP, but it's about moving one level up. The product is now the API. And that's where we need also the cloud native technologies, the hyperscalers, because they give us those agility, scalability, resilience, you name it. These are all crucial for this API first. We need to leverage those cloud infrastructures to create these integrations that we need. Telcos were on the back foot in the 2 past inflections. Remember, disruption of the telco pipeline, Apple and Android, they introduced the platform concept. The second inflection point, the startup, those platform startups, without legacy infrastructure and cost, very quickly, they introduced the consumer communication systems, challenging the telcos. In this current third wave, in this post-digital and AI era, we need to serve as a picks and shovel of this new era. And for that, we need the APIs, we need a platform. And that's where we need to shift more and more from SDPs to API first mindset.
Thank you, Fortune. That's really excellent. Great sort of background and sort of breadth, if you like, of the history of how we got to where we are now. And I mean, obviously, the critical nature of ecosystems and being able to leverage the hyperscalers scale and relationship with developers and all the rest of it, which I think is a really strong message. And it's great to see that you're observing that there's traction there and telcos are moving over to that model. I wonder if I could just ask you, Fahim, to talk a little bit more about how telcos can cultivate those relationships with those developers to bring those on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was great to hear Fortune's passionate speech on that particular subject. It's a subject that's very close to my heart, and I couldn't agree more with everything that he said. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we as carriers also need to be a little bit conscious of is the fact that, you know, if you look at any sort of great sort of tech companies that are really sort of thriving in the space where APIs are involved in the consumption of their services, they have a very, very high level of evangelism and developer relations sort of organizations that they actually establish to be able to help the developers, you know, because eventually, you know, the developers effectively become a marketing channel into the organization that you're actually serving. You know, they will advocate for you if they believe that you are easy to work with. You know, and you know, ultimately the developers want to build stuff. They don't want to build stuff that is too difficult to interface with. So you know, this whole idea of the developer relations type model within sort of carriers, in my opinion, is something that is really very important, because, you know, it's for exactly that reason. And you know, the challenge that we have is it's a bit of a chicken and egg type situation. You know, do you actually invest money, put together a developer relations function when you don't have the adoption, or do you wait for the adoption and then build out the functionality, even though not having that capability might sort of hamper adoption a little bit? So I mean, how do you draw the balance between those two things? You know, and one of the things that we have to consider as a sort of telecoms community is we need to stop treating APIs as old. You know, because that's what they've been up until now. You know, the adoption has been low. You know, and if we plan to take this stuff seriously, we actually have to think about how our organizations are going to be built in order to support developer communities. And then that to me is something which is a bit of a gap at the moment, and something that I think is starting to come into the thinking of a lot of carriers who are actually looking at their API portfolio and thinking, you know, the portfolio is pretty decent, but the adoption isn't, and asking the question, well, why is that?
Yeah, no, that's really sort of important, isn't it? Because basically that comes down to thinking about how you're serving the customer. You know, the customer being sort of twofold, being the sort of developers, but also the end users and everything. So unless you're sort of working with them to make sure that the results, the outcomes are what is needed, you're never going to get that adoption, aren't you? So it sounds like that's a pretty sort of crucial thing, and a sort of good message for operators that they need to develop those skills and that operation, that relations management sort of operation. So that's really a good sort of message. Well, you said we were going to talk a little bit about different types of APIs and different customer needs that they're serving, and how that might vary in different markets. So I want to come back to you, Aulia, to talk a little bit more, if you can, about the situation with you in Indonesia. You talked a bit about sort of fraud prevention and other things. What kind of other things are you doing, and why particularly fraud management? Is that a particularly useful sort of API and service as well? So if you could talk a bit more about the kind of services that you're doing there through APIs in Indonesia, that would be really good background.
Yeah, so a little bit background about the country itself. Indonesia is 275 million of customers spread across 17,000 islands. So it's an archipelagic country. In terms of telco market, we are 95% prepaid, so a little bit different with most developed country. In terms of financial services, we are having a quite low financial inclusion index. We have a quite low credit bureau coverage. So with that background, it creates demands in the market. Telco sits in a very vast amount of data with our relationship with our customers. And that data, with the help of AI, can be turned into several things, several use cases to help the financial inclusion. For example, it can be turned into a kind of alternative credit score, where bank and financial institution can have a different view on the customers if they don't have a record in the credit bureau. It can be used also for the KYC process, because in terms of coverage, telco almost cover everyone in Indonesia, but banks does not. So they can rely on our data as a KYC process as well. And lately, we also look into services related with the authentication and fraud, because you know, in a country where a central registry is not that strong, data about the customers can vary much. And then telco, as I mentioned before, we sit in a very fast amount of data, and we can leverage those data to develop use cases related with the fraud and security. I think
that's really interesting, because that's quite different, really, in the sense from the situation that would be faced by a lot of people in sort of developed markets, where I suppose it's mostly now it's subscription services rather than prepaid, and we do have that sort of financial infrastructure. But I'm sure the situation in Indonesia is replicated in many parts of the developing world, so that in a sense sort of paints a much broader picture about the kind of potential for APIs and the benefits that they can bring. So that's really interesting. You I think, did you mention SIM swap as being one of the applications that you use, one of the applications served by APIs?
Yeah. So related with the SIM swap, actually, with the release of the CAMARA standard last year, we start to develop several APIs. As far as I know, there are kind of 10 of 11 API standard already in the CAMARA. We just released one, the SIM swap API. It helps banks to detect a potential fraud related with the SIM swap. In the near future, we will also release the number verification and also device location verification. And even before we launch it, we already receive quite a lot of demands, because right now, bank and financial institutions rely on the OTP-based authentication to authenticate the customers, which we know there are a lot of challenge and fraud related to the OTP takeover. So we will very excited to launch the service soon, and hopefully market will be very excited as well as us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds very, very positive, and a good sort of illustration, really, of how telcos can play a broader role than just simply providing connectivity to sort of feed into the general economy in Indonesia, as well as the financial services market, and that's very, very encouraging. So we haven't yet talked too much about the role of AI, which is, of course, pivotal to this particular panel discussion. So I just want to sort of throw it open, really, to the panelists to talk a bit about how they think APIs will harness AI and Gen AI in future. For example, can AI help identify opportunities for new APIs targeting specific customer needs, and can it help in the creation of those APIs? So I wonder, actually, if I can bring you in, Fortune, initially, about the role that AI may play, a positive role to enhance APIs.
Thank you. I would say it's already happening, right? But what I'm seeing from the industry so far is very much use case-based approach. Remember, to really leverage AI at scale, we talked earlier on the move from STP into API first mindset, right? So most telcos are not there yet, but what I'm observing in the market and through discussions with my peers across Europe is been driven very much use case by use case. Okay, so some of us are looking at how we can leverage AI to drive better data analysis, to get better actionable insight, right? Another case that I heard was about fault management. Okay, how do we improve the quality of our network? So fault management, network optimization is another one that others are looking into and are testing. But let's not also forget process automation in our call centers, right? Billing, provisioning, customer support, robotic process automation. Those are the various ones that people are looking at currently. But in terms of using it at scale, I'm not seeing yet much in the market. I don't know about my other panelists.
So yeah, I mean, Fahim, do you sort of agree with that sort of picture that Fortune's painting there, and the role of AI in all of those types of application and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I do very much agree with Fortune. It is a very broad topic, so it's always very difficult to center on a couple of things. I think that there is a lot of AI experimentation that is happening within carriers at the moment, but in terms of actually really understanding where where the right applications are in terms of from a game-changing AI point of view. That those things are still under some sort of discovery sort of phase at the moment. All of the cases that Fortune mentioned are areas where AI can play a role. And do some really, really clever stuff, really interesting stuff as well. I've seen organizations discuss how AI can be used in call centers and do voice sentiment analysis, which is kind of an interesting case, to try to figure out how the customer is feeling based upon how they are speaking to the actual call center agent, and then that prompting specific responses and specific specific offers, etc., based upon how happy or angry they are, I guess, is probably the best way to think about it. But from the other side of things, I think if you think about it from an AI an API development point of view, I think AI also has a massive role to play. Ultimately we have going back to Fortune's point about sort of customer exposure of capability. There is an absolute ton of capability that needs to be exposed, and tooling that's based around AI can certainly help us to actually make sure that we are generating APIs. We're making sure that we can use AI sort of support, if you like, to make sure that they are consistent, to make sure that they are secure and they're not exposing any data by doing vulnerability analysis. By using Gen AI, the likes of the co-pilots of the world to actually support the development process to help with productivity in that space. So yeah, I mean, definitely is something that we need to do. And then there is also another area which is probably worth a little bit more thought. And I don't think that we've quite got there yet. It's actually, how do we expose the AI capability that we develop internally so that it can be consumed by other parties? Right, so if you build a certain sort of model with a certain level of intelligence, a certain capability, well, why would you not be able to potentially, via API, expose that so that others can use it without having to implement the whole model themselves, or without having to share your IP in terms of what's actually happening under the covers? And I think that's pretty exciting, because like Aulia said, we do sit on a lot of data. We are able to train models in ways that many industries are not able to train them. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of work to be done there as well.
And I mean, that sounds very interesting, because there you are sort of really, in a way, sort of talking about turbocharging APIs, aren't you? Because the depth of data and also the capabilities that you can expose can really be sort of expanded. You get much more personalization, customization of services potentially that way, and automation. The two together, both bespoke and automated at the same time. So the potentials are very, very high. But obviously the risks attendant on that are pretty high as well, in terms of security and data privacy implications and so on. But it sounds as though it's very early days anyway in terms of the industry's exploration of that. Aulia, I wonder if you could sort of say a little bit about the experience in Indonesia, about whether people are getting up to speed with AI and how that might sort of create new opportunities.
Yeah, so I think the other side on how AI can drive API use cases, that nowadays people are exposed with AI, with the hype of AI. People are experiencing AI. Nowadays, you just need your browser and basically a data connection to play around with AI. So many organizations start to thinking about how they can incorporate AI in their day-to-day operation. So from that point of view, the development of AI use case is not only driven by us, the players, but also driven by the market itself, because they want they kind of explore more AI use cases. The other things that AI can do is actually AI is not only used by the good guy, unfortunately, the bad guy also use AI. So in terms of security and authentication, we also see high numbers of fraud that already very sophisticated in using AI. For example, online scam using video call with deepfake technology. This kind of thing happens in Indonesia. Other thing is that maybe right now biometric authentication that we think it is a golden standard for authentication is no longer fraud proof. Nowadays, there are a lot of technology that can fake your face, fake your voice, fake your fingerprint. That's also drive up demands on us to provide the additional layer of security and authentication for the customer to be safe from this kind of sophisticated fraudster. So I think this is the other way AI can drive use case for us, not necessarily the AI itself, but the behavior of people, the good guy and the bad guy. By experiencing AI, they will drive more use case for us.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's almost like using AI to defeat fraudulent uses of AI, sort of like cat and mouse, you know, who can stay ahead, you know, of the race. A very important social role, potentially, that telcos could play, because obviously everybody's very much afraid about deep fakes and the use of AI for sort of fraudulent purposes. So if telcos can get up to the forefront of combating that, that could be a good opportunity. Well, that's great. I mean, Fortune, just to sort of finish off the discussion on the AI side of things, you've talked about an API first model, I don't know if you could sort of explain a little bit more about how you sort of see that and how that sort of changes the role of telcos and potentially leveraging AI in that new role for the telco.
In the past, telcos relied heavily on custom-built solutions, you know, which are closely coupled, oversized, operated by skilled engineers, right? Hey, I have met my engineers in my current company. I look at them and just, you know, these are mini gods, right? They're very, very skilled folks. All this making the telco business case more challenges as we converge towards the digital and AI era, right? I was reading earlier on this year, according to the GSMA, there are about 107 live 5G deployment as of now. And by 2025, it is expected that there will be more than 1.8 billion 5G connections offered by 410 plus telcos in 123 markets. That's a lot of stats. In addition to this, I was listening to Mike Fries, the the CEO of Liberty Global, who is one of our shareholders, that there will be 4 times growth data every year. All these preludes for open and cloud native infrastructure, because we need to be more and more into this ecosystem and API first. Now, the role of the telcos is changing or has changed drastically. And we need to be part of this. I believe the telco needs to be the glue of this digital era. But does that mean that we continue being telco? I'll give you the example of T-Mobile in the US. In fact, they've started calling themselves Un-carrier. They've shifted completely from the telco approach. Telco potentially have lots of power here, driving the ecosystem, providing the connectivity that is integral to delivering one API, delivery on the APIs, the journey that we are on. But that also demands a complete shift from the landscape. And I think it's up to us, especially the 3 of us on the panel, to work with our partners, our companies, our friends in other telcos to see how together we can start turning the telco landscape. Telcos have lots of power, lots of skilled engineers in those environments, but we also need to start addressing the shift by leveraging more the API. As I said earlier on, an API is a product. And in this increasingly software-driven world, CIOs, CTIOs, CTOs, they should be thinking API first.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, that's a very good, strong message. I mean, we're talking quite a major sort of transformation, aren't we? A shift, as you say. Some people, I think, have described that as the telco to techco journey, where sort of telcos are sort of leveraging their connectivity to sort of really kickstart, if you like, catalyze a bigger sort of transformation in terms of, you know, industries, different industries, you know, perhaps, you know, powered by AI and so on. So it's a very exciting time. As you say, telcos do need to kind of work together. And I think that's quite an important message as well in terms of collaborating across the industry, you know. And Fahim has talked about standardization being key there as well.
Yeah, I think One point very quickly is which you touch on there is collaboration. Absolutely, across the industry, we need to do more of that.
Okay, well, that's a very positive message. Now, I was wondering if I could turn things over to more of a sort of Q&A type situation, but I'm looking at the chat, and I don't think we have had too many questions coming through. So I'm going to sort of ask a sort of follow-up question to our discussion here. One of the things that which we we're hoping we could sort of get round to talking about a bit more was the different types of API platforms and initiatives that are going currently. Particularly, obviously, the two ones that people are most familiar with are the GSMA Open Gateway and also the CAMARA open source project, and then there's TM Forum. I just wondered if our panelists had any views as to which of those platforms they thought offered the most sort of promise, offered the most potential now, what their sort of comparative benefits or challenges are, and also how they compare with some of the more proprietary platforms that are out there, such as Ericsson's Vonage or Nokia's Network as Code. So I'm just going to throw this open to the panelists. You know, how do they see all of these different programs getting going, and how are they going to converge towards more sort of industry-wide standardization? I don't know who would like to sort of take that one on initially.
Yeah, I think.
I'll go on earlier. I've talked to you.
Sure, you'll go ahead. Yes, please do. Yeah.
Okay,
Aulia,
so
did you want to say something?
I think. Yeah, I think in terms of CAMARA or other API standard, it certainly brings benefit to us because right now we can expose our capability in this standard way, so that customers can use it easily, and we can bring more use case to the market very easily. In terms of comparison between the open source and the proprietary, I think it will converge eventually. As I know, the Ericsson Vonage is also following some of their APIs, also following the CAMARA standard. I think it's not whether it's proprietary or open source, but which use case is more needed by the customers. I think everyone will converge to eventually one standard for that, and that's my view.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's sort of positive, optimistic view. Did Fahim, did you want to sort of say anything about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's kind of two tracks that actually happen in parallel. So there needs to be a space where innovation can happen, and innovation needs to happen quickly. And typically that's going to happen in slightly more proprietary environments, because standardization can be a little bit of an arduous process. We have a lot of parties that get involved in standardization. There's a lot of agreement that needs to happen. There's basically everything needs to get to a point whereby all parties are happy. I guess all parties are equally as unhappy, depending on how you look at these things. So yeah, I mean, the standardization track is always going to be about how do you actually scale up well-established capabilities that everybody agrees need to exist, how they work, and how they're going to operate them. And then you've got this other sort of a stream of activity which is all around where the innovation is happening. And to be quite honest, you don't want to put that down a standardization track, because all you're going to do with that is slow it down. And that's not what you want to do. You want to basically, have people innovate, figure out what they actually want to do, and then take the learnings of that innovation and what they've actually done and build that into a standardization track, so that basically they can then use it at scale. And you need the same parties involved in both things. So yeah, I think that the two worlds would need to coexist. In terms of the API standards, I mean, I think that basically one of the things that I'm also seeing is there is also the standards development, the SDOs, if you like, standards development organization, are also now starting to work together a lot more than they have done in the past. There is, in the fixed line space, for example, the TM Forum and the MEP collaborate a lot. The MEP APIs are based upon the TM Forum APIs, at least in spirit, in board sort of architecture as well. And it is just a case of I think we're going to see a lot more convergence in that space as well. So I don't think it becomes a should I use X or should I use Y, because X and Y are not going to exist separately. And then you also have that sort of standardization space, and then also the innovation space where stuff gets proprietary. So I don't think it's a is it one or is it the other? It's kind of both all the time.
Yeah, no, and that's very positive. Fortune, what would you like to say?
Yes, remember what I said during my discussion on STPs. Telcos, we like to create things very specific to us, right? That's it. But I'm seeing more and more convergence, and we have no choice. It's got to go there, right? We want to drive that superior customer experience. We want to attract more developers, right? And if you look at where the industry is going currently, if we really want to play that role in the ecosystem, we want to be that glue of this third wave of the inflection point I'm talking about. We need that convergence, and it's already happening. It needs to happen. As I said, the future needs to be cloud native, it needs to be open, and it needs to be leveraged by partners. So standardization and convergence is, we have no option, right? It needs to go there. Otherwise, we are going to replicate the past that we are leaving behind us. So the future to me is open APIs.
Okay, brilliant. That's very very positive and very consistent messaging from everybody here, which is great in terms of that future convergence and standardization and sort of maximization of the opportunities that we're all hoping for. Now, a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to just ask a very quick sort of one sentence answer type questions about APIs, which is for each of you to take on in turn. What do panelists think will be the most useful and profitable API that they're either running now or planning to introduce in their networks? So if I can ask Aulia first. Very quick answer, Aulia.
Yeah, so I think Telco has a unique position on this because we have data, we have communication with our customers. So with those two assets, I think API related with the customer authentication and fraud will still becomes the main contributors to our external monetization for now.
Okay, excellent. Now over to you, Fahim. What would your answer be there?
I think mainly in the fixed line space. I think it's all around sort of ordering and activation and being able to do that at speed and at scale. That's kind of the key area where I believe that there is most value to be gained.
Okay, excellent. And now, Fortune, what's your number one API then?
I think I will join my partners, and the first one for us where we need to is how we work with the banks. So it comes again down to the authentication and the fraud. Our industry is a headache for us, right? And as we pivot from the old ways of managing fraud, this will be one of the first that I think will be leveraged. And also, if you are bringing in third parties to sell services to those third parties to leverage, I think it will be one of these.
Okay. Excellent. Now, I gather there is one question from the audience, which I'm not seeing on the chat. So maybe if somebody can help me out to see what...
Hi there. David. It's on the Q&A channel, not the chat, which is just between us. So I'll read it out for you. And this is addressed to Fortune. Sorry to pick on you, Fortune.
That's good.
But in relation to your comment on network exposure, is there any traction from 3G GPP CAPIF in the vertical industries?
I must admit, I'm not seeing much of that yet. But could we come back and can I find out a bit more and send a response and you can share with the person who asked the question? Is that okay?
Fortune, I can put you and the questioner together so that you can reply by email.
That'll be good. That'll be fantastic. Let's do that.
I'm exceedingly sorry to say you've run out of time because that was really great panel on a very new kind of subject area, really. So thank you so much. We hope you'll all come back and talk to us in a few months, because we suspect things might have changed a little by then. Do you think so? It seems to me something that's moving pretty fast.
Certainly.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you very, very much indeed. That was great. And can't
you.
wait to get it online on demand. I think you'll be very
Okay.
popular.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Rex.
you.